Hello everybody and welcome back to another video. I'm your host, the OT Astartes, and it is the first Astarties Analysis of 2024. What delights will happen this year, I wonder? Oh wait, well already, I'm tired. We are continuing on Hetty Feather Season 3 now. We're on Season 3, Episode 3. So, the thumbnail says, how has Matron not been arrested yet? Oh well, there's always the exterminatus option. Yeah, that is for when you are in desperate measures, folks. So I hope you all had a nice Christmas and a lovely New Year. So, previously what's happened is that Hetty ran off again in order to find Ida after she was kicked out. She met up with a girl called Sissy. Her and Sissy sold flowers in the streets, but were pursued by Mr. Bronston and a group of street children. Mr. Bronston was hired by Matron in order to deal with Hetty once and for all. Now Hetty's back in the Foundling Hospital. Series 3, Episode 3. Hetty is depressed and she reflects on almost getting to see Ida once more and is hopeful that Mrs. Smith will confront Matron now that she is on her side. During the night, somebody breaks into the Foundling Hospital and it is revealed to be Blanche's sister. So, for those who don't know who Jess is Blanche's sister. I believe I covered an online-only short, so this mini-sode was online exclusive, called Blanche's Story. It was only available, I think, on the CBBC website. Basically, it showed you how Blanche got to the Foundling Hospital, and sort of an origin story for her and her sister Jess. So Jess wants to run away with Blanche, just like they promised years ago. But Blanche tells her that if they ran away now, then the police would catch up with them like they did with Hetty. And Jess doesn't want Mr. Grace to catch up with her either, as something bad would happen to her. Mr. Grace was mentioned in a previous episode. All that we know is that he leads a gang of street children. Blanche tells Jess to stay in the Foundling Hospital for the rest of the night, and they can talk the next day. When Blanche gets back to the dormitories, Hetty wakes up. The next morning, Hetty complains that her uniform has been taken away. She goes to Blanche and Blanche denies doing anything, but Hetty points out that she saw her sneaking around the other night. Nurse Winterton sort of saves the day by supplying one of the junior uniforms, as the person who was wearing the uniform are currently in the infirmary. Sheila and Elizabeth both mock Hetty at this, and Hetty goes off to get changed. Oh, we're in the kitchen now. So, the girls assemble into kitchen and are given a task from Cook Jenkins. Hey, I'll work the mad matron, don't you worry about that. Gideon joins in as well, as it is jam day. Oh, I love jam day, me. Oh yes, it's a very special day for those who work in kitchen. We go around making jam. Don't know what for though. Blanche then complains that she is unwell. Cook Jenkins tells them that there shall be no mucking about or sarving today. Gideon then leaves the room as he is given a list, and Cook Jenkins assigns everybody to an assigned job in the kitchen. She also appoints Sheila second in command as well. Oh, she's beginning to gain some of that trust, that Sheila. Oh, yes, I trust her with my dear heart. Oh, if the Foundling Hospital were burning, I'd trust her to save the stuff in the kitchen. I'd trust her to go and put it out. Meanwhile, outside, the boys are assigned the task of picking out the fruit, and whoever picks the most will eat the fruit that Nurse Winterton picks in her own basket. Mr. Bronston shows up and then runs into Matron to tell her that one of Mr. Grace's child thieves has escaped and that it is Blanche's sister. He also tells her that she is in possession of a book that has vital information Just then, Cranbourne shows up and Matron Bottomley lies to him by saying that there is cloth that has been donated to the Foundling Hospital. When Mr. Bronston leaves, Matron tells Cranbourne that she has an urgent matter to attend to, but Cranbourne says that he is one of his own and says that there is something in the library. So Jess is in the library and she starts to climb out until Cranbourne approaches with Matron Bottomley. Jess hides under the table while Cranbourne points out that the room is falling apart. As he was told by Mrs. Smith that she doesn't want the interiors to be neglected, so he wants to carry out a survey using a clipboard that Colonel Brigwell gave him. Matron sarcastically rants and then tells Cranbourne that Mrs. Smith does not have the experience and outsiders must not interfere with their methods. As she is about to leave, an apple falls from underneath the table and Matron spots Jess, but she keeps quiet about it by telling Cranbourne to start the survey immediately. Now we go back to kitchen. Into kitchen, the girls are hard at work and Matthias arrives to deliver some apples. Harriet offers to help him put them away. Hetty, though, rips her uniform and Blanche complains that her knife is too blunt. So she goes out, swiftly followed by Hetty. In the corridor, Hetty and Blanche manage to avoid getting spotted by Matron Bottomley and Cranbourne surveying the building. Nurse Macclesfield then shows up, telling Matron and Cranbourne that Mrs. Smith and the constable have shown up. Blanche and Hetty go into the library and Blanche tells Jess that they need to go to the constable. Hetty and Blanche manage to go to the library and Blanche tells her sister that they need to get out of there now as the constable has shown up. And Hetty also shows up with Matthias. Hetty asks Blanche what she is doing and Blanche tells her that her and Jess were just leaving. Hetty tells her that it is unsafe out there and they have no money. Jess shows off some stuff that she stole from Mr. Grace, including the book, which has a lot of vital information. Tell you what, I'll tell you somebody who has a lot more information than that book has. Liara Tassoni, the Shadow Broker. The worst kept secret in the worst kept secret in the universe. Matthias warns that they will all get into trouble, and Hetty warns Jess that she'll go to prison for stealing. Outside, Cranbourne and Matron Bottomley run into Mrs. Smith and the constable. She was about to show him the library, but Matron says that that's in no state for visitors. After saying that the constable is a Charles Dickens fan, Matron Bottomley suggests that the constable may be there on serious business and he may want to go to her office. But the constable is still eager to go and see the books. Matthias and Hetty both decide to hide Jess and seek out Mrs. Smith's help. Matthias suggests that the boys hide the bag that's full of stolen items, and to end the scene, Hetty notices that Jess is wearing her Foundling uniform. The plan is executed and Matthias dodges Matron, Cranbourne, the constable and Mrs. Smith. The adults go to the library and the constable suggests that he can educate the Foundlings about the dangers of life. But as it's jam day, they will be unavailable for any education. Cranbourne explains how it works and the constable wants to see the Guardian. Mrs. Smith wants to see Hetty. Meanwhile, Hetty and Blanche make Jess look like a Foundling girl and are spotted by Cook Jenkins, who surprisingly don't realise that Jess is a runaway. Hey up! We got a new girl to help in the kitchen here. Oh well, many hands make light work here. Or is it two cooks spoil the broth? Oh, I dunno. Well, many hands make light work, you know what I say. Matron Bottomley goes back to the library and looks for Jess. She is not under the table and she calls out her name a few times. In the kitchen, Sheila notices that Jess is new, and Hetty says that she's just a skivvy. When Jess retracts by saying that she's not a skivvy, Hetty doubles down by saying not if she goes to prison. Sheila asks what's going on, but Cook Jenkins interrupts. She pretends that everything is okay, and she gives Jess something to wash, and if that wasn't enough to make it even more stressful, Nurse Macclesfield comes down, asking to make tea for Matron. Hetty volunteers, but Macclesfield selects Elizabeth instead. Elizabeth puts kettle on, and Hetty writes a note that is going to be smuggled with the tea, asking for Mrs. Smith to come down and talk to her. She tries to give it to Elizabeth, but she doesn't want any involvement in this. But Hetty gives it to her anyway, hidden within a napkin. Eh, by gum, that Hetty's clever. In the garden, Matthias and co are getting rid of the stolen goods. They decide to hide them in plain sight in various rooms. However, Vince is watching from a distance and they are about to depart until Cranbourne comes up with the constable. The constable is on a tour, so as he goes off, Nurse Winterson is asked to help show him around. He notes that she is a fan of a certain flower, and he then goes off to have a look around. Gideon hides the candle holder with others like it, but Vince isn't too far behind. He grabs and hides it in his apple basket. Elizabeth hands Mrs. Smith her tea tray. She thinks about telling her about Hetty's letter, but then she goes away. Vince goes back to Judd with the candle holder. Meanwhile, Sheila asks Jess to get more sugar and tells Hetty to chop quicker. Oh, that Sheila's a feisty one, you know. Matron Bottomley comes in and Jess hides in the pantry. Matron goes to look. Matron opens the door to the pantry and Jess is lurking and avoids getting spotted. She asks Cook if there's anything unusual happening and asks to see Hetty and Blanche in private. They are both told to sit and Matron interrogates them about Jess. Matron accuses them of hiding a thief, which makes Blanche deny such a label. Matron says that Blanche and Hetty will be punished as well as Jess and tells them to go back to their duties. When they go back to the kitchen, Hetty and Blanche form a plan. Blanche suggests that Jess returns the stolen goods, and Hetty says that they could tell Mrs. Smith that Jess came to return the items to the constable. Gideon then comes in and Hetty announces a change of plan. He then goes back to Candlestick, but it's not there. Gideon returns to the garden to tell Matthias and co that it's gone, when suddenly Vince holds it up in front of them. He promises to give it them back under the condition that he is given 3 baskets. Matthias goes to retrieve the book, but Matron Bottomley stops him in the corridor. He says that he's on a break and he tells him to carry on until she stops him. Until Matron stops him again, asking if he saw anything else, specifically a book. Matthias says no, and again, he is dismissed. Matthias goes out to tell his friends, and Walter says that he hid the book in the library. Matthias says that whoever wants it is important, and she just let him go. Mrs. Smith is returning the tea tray to the kitchen. Oh, well, you don't need to come in here. You needn't come in here, my duck. I best send either Hetty or Elizabeth to come and get it. I'm far too busy down here instructing these young ladies how to make jam. Mrs. Smith is returning the tea tray to the kitchen, and Matron insists that she does it, but Mrs. Smith refuses her offer. She comes into the kitchen, and Hetty then gets the napkin, but she can't find a letter that was enclosed in it, and she looks over at Elizabeth. Elizabeth shakes her head slightly while Mrs. Smith is offered to have food cooked for her. She also warns her child to be careful with a kitchen knife, and then she goes to see Jess. Matron offers to take her away as she's realised that the runaway is working in the kitchen. Oh, I got a runway in my kitchen. Oh, it's been a stressful and exciting day today. Mrs. Smith wants a word with Hetty in private, but she trips up, which gives Jess and Blanche an escape opportunity. Blanche shows Jess to the gate, and Jess manages to get to the other side, but Blanche is caught by Cranbourne, and she tells Jess to run. Mrs. Smith is recovering from her fall, and she tells Matron Bottomley that she came to offer Hetty a job so that she can see Ida. Until Cranbourne comes in with Blanche by his side and says that Blanche had tried to escape. Jess runs in and says that Blanche was looking after her. Hetty says that she's on the run from a street gang, and she also suggests that the refuge centre would be a good place, and Mrs. Smith says that she's willing to take her there after some arguing. Hetty denies the job offer and gives it to Blanche so that she can see Jess more, and everybody leaves the room. Oh, well, Cook praises Sheila. Cook praises Sheila and Hetty reflects on wanting a job while Sheila has one. Matron comes in the room to fetch Blanche and Jess. They both say goodbye and thank you to everybody, but Blanche also whispers the instruction to give Mr. Grace his book back. We end with Vince and Judd winning the mini competition and Hetty looking at the stolen book. Series 3, Episode 4. So Hetty writes her diary and she talks about taking chances. We see Ned delivering a crate of apples. Harriet smiles and Matthias wonders whether to steal an apple behind Cook Jenkins' back. Oh, Matthias! Oh, that cheeky bugger! Oh, I'll catch him, I'll have him, and I shall tell him off. Oh, in my day we didn't do that. Post-title sequence, Mr. Bronston is describing the book's contents to Matron Bottomley. He says that it contains details of foundlings that she had sold off, so finding the book is a big priority. Matron goes into kitchen and Cook Jenkins reports that the flour that they are using is inefficient. I shan't have inefficient flour in my kitchen. Oh well, we need good old Yorkshire flour, that's why, if there is any. Matron says that a skillful cook does not blame the ingredients. Aye, I disagree with that, Matron. Nor if that ingredient's inefficient. Oh dear. Honestly, they don't do this on Bake Off. When she goes off, she says to Cook that Mrs. Smith will be dining with her today, and she asks for cold meat. Oh, well, I don't mind cold meat, that ain't bad. Well, I hate cold turkey. To be honest, I'm not a cold meat fan myself. I prefer it warmed up, it just tastes so dry. In the boys' dormitories, Ned is writing on a notepad. He's on about the skills of a detective. Vince observes Nurse Winterson walking with the constable, and Cranbourne comes in telling them all to grab their jackets and go out. The constable asks Nurse Winterson if she is free, and Nurse Winterson tells him that she is very busy. The constable offers his company when Nurse Macclesfield arrives with the foundlings. While Macclesfield simps for the constable, Harriet says that if the book is found, then they could get into trouble. Oh, really? Trouble? Is that what you call it? More like danger? If this belongs to someone like the Shadow Broker... Sorry, it's not Mass Effect, it's Hetty Feather. If this got into the hands of some criminal, you would be in big danger. Hetty suggests that Mr. Grace has paid Matron and that she hides the book somewhere else. Macclesfield overhears the foundlings talking and she shuts them up. She asks the constable to stay for a cup of tea the next time he comes. And she leaves with the girls. Matron spots the constable and asks if there is a problem. He tells her that he was on patrol and is just checking in with everything. Matron and Winterson then go back to work. Matron then grabs Sheila for a quick word. Matron says that she's heard Cook Jenkins' report and that she tells her that she's looking for something that Jess had left there. Sheila says that Hetty and Harriet were looking for something and is then dismissed. Now a visitor arrives. His name is Mr. Benjamin and he's from New York City, bro. New York City, bro. Mr. Benjamin awaits Matron's arrival and he wants a tour as he is early. Matron offers to have one of the nurses take him around, but Mr. Benjamin insists and asks if she calls him Chester as a way to charm her. In the boys' classroom, Judd notices that the roof is leaking water. Cranbourne moves him away from the leak and goes off to investigate. Gideon is on edge today and Nurse Winterson comes in to supervise. Vince asks if she was with Constable Clark in the morning, and Ned backs it up by asking whether something has happened. She simply says that there's nothing to worry about, and she leaves. Vince grins and then sees an opportunity. Meanwhile, in the girls' class, Nurse Macclesfield talks about using ing in words, and Hetty is asking why Matron would be getting money for Mr. Grace. She asks if Blanche wasn't the only foundling that was sold, and Harriet tells her that she'll make things worse if she keeps going after Matron. Hetty, however, is determined to find out what's really going on. Hetty makes Harriet spill her ink pen and is told to go clean herself up, while Elizabeth asks to go to the infirmary. Macclesfield suspects that Elizabeth wants to Scythe and she tells her to get back to work. Matron Bottomley shows Mr. Benjamin the girls' dormitories. While he looks out into the window, Matron searches underneath Hetty's bed. She's handed a letter, and when Mr. Benjamin leaves the room, Matron looks at Harriet's bed and finds that the book is hidden away. Mr. Benjamin tells Matron that he wants to open his own foundling refugee centre in New York, bro, and he wants to appoint a matron. Cranbourne comes up to them, informing her about the leaks. Mr. Benjamin and Cranbourne introduce themselves to one another, but Mr. Benjamin wants to go. Matron tells Cranbourne that they can afford a short delay as he is a friend of Lady Asquith's. She says that she will go to talk to him. Matron tells Cranbourne that they can afford a short delay as he is a friend of Lady Asquith's. She says that she will talk to him later. As they go off, Mr. Benjamin calls Cranbourne Cranfield. After they have gone, Hetty goes into the dormitories and looks in the hiding place. She finds that the book is not there. Matron and Mr. Benjamin go to the girls' classroom. Hetty comes in as a late arrival and points out that she likes to know everything about the foundlings so that they can be placed in jobs suited to their talents, as she looks at Hetty and Harriet. Mr. Benjamin is impressed and Matron goes up to Harriet and she tells her that the Asquiths are now in New York and that they want her to join them. She also asks through gritted teeth what she expected her to say, as everybody congratulates her. She goes over for a word and Elizabeth wishes that she was going anywhere or America. Sheila offers to ask Cook if any help is needed in the kitchen so Elizabeth can stay with her. Outside, Matron tells Hetty to tell Cook to make a leg of lamb and trifle for Mr. Benjamin. She also says that she's heard of reports of Harriet hiding stolen property within the hospital under her bed. Hetty denies any claims of this, but Matron tells Hetty that it will be a big shame if Harriet was to lose her place or someone else to cost her this opportunity. In the boys' classroom, Cranbourne says that they can all look forward to military drills later on while monitoring the leaks. Judd complains that he doesn't feel well and his stomach hurts. Ned asks Gideon if he's faking it as well, but Gideon says that he probably ate too much at breakfast. Ned points out to Walter that he also felt unwell the other day, and Ned suspects that there was some disease spreading. Vince asks out of the blue whether nurses are allowed to marry, and Cranbourne says that regulations forbid it, as goes for the matrons. Judd jokingly asks who would want to marry Matron. Mr. Benjamin walks and talks with Matron. She offers advice and wants a less progressive outlook and offers to watch the boys perform military drills before they eat. Now Hetty goes down to tell Cook of Matron's order and she says, well, she's changed her tune. Hetty jokes about Mr. Benjamin and she sees the bad Yorkshire puddings. Cook says that she can't serve them Yorkshire puddings in the state that they're in. Oh, they ain't true Yorkshire puddings unless they're made in Yorkshire. While Mr. Benjamin is talking to the boys, Matron and Cranbourne have a conversation. Matron says that there are many opportunities for her over in the USA. Cranbourne, however, doesn't like Mr. Benjamin bragging. Matron says that she likes his confidence. In the distance, Mr. Benjamin smiles at Matron when they talk about baseball. Mr. Benjamin praises Matron, but Cranbourne takes credit for their education. Matron then announces that one foundling will be going to New York, and she says that it is Harriet. She looks at Matthias when she says it as well. On the subject of Harriet, Harriet goes to tell Hetty about Matron seeing the book, and she suggests using this to her advantage to stop her from going to New York by getting into trouble. Harriet worries about the distance to America. Cranbourne walks by with the boys and Harriet says that she doesn't want to go, but Hetty interrupts by saying the book is in Matron's office. Harriet complains to Hetty by telling her that she never listens to her. Matthias walks by to congratulate her in a moody voice now that everybody knows that Harriet is going off to America. The boys are preparing for drill. Judd is stalling, as is Gideon. Matthias plans to go to America to be with Harriet, and Walter hits a nerve when he jokes about Matthias stowing away. Ned deducts that Cranbourne was ill the other week, as were some of the other junior girls. He thinks that a disease is spreading throughout the hospital, and Ned thinks that somebody is making them ill deliberately. The military drill begins, and Mr. Benjamin arrives to spectate. He calls Cranbourne by the wrong name again, and Hetty comes out with Harriet. Judd feels ill again and then notices that Elizabeth was covering her mouth and holding her hands around her stomach. Well, Cook offers some tea and the drill continues. Oh, well, if you're ever ill, or if you're depressed or feeling down, you know what'll cure you? Good old Yorkshire tea. There's always time for tea. Hey, help, even when I'm on my deathbed, I shall be drinking tea. I love me Yorkshire tea, me. Milk and sugar, oh, there ain't nothing like it. Especially if it's from Yorkshire. Suddenly, Judd throws up, as does Gideon and Elizabeth. Ned suggests that the flower has been poisoned. He talks about how Matthias and him are not ill as they didn't have any of the Yorkshire puddings. My Yorkshire pudding's making people ill. Oh, this is a great shame to me own county. Cranbourne tells them that he read an article where criminal gangs poison the flour, and he points out that his supplier was one of Matron's contacts. Infowars.com. The flour is being poisoned, folks. Mr. Benjamin insists that she is needed here. They go anyway, and Judd is taken to the infirmary. Vince asks Winterston to tell Constable Clark that he says hello. Meanwhile, Hetty is searching Matron's office for the book, and when Matron walks down the corridor with Mr. Benjamin, she deters all criticism from Mr. Benjamin toward Cranbourne. Ah, yes, where have we seen that before? She keeps on insisting that she should go to New York, but Mr. Benjamin says that she's needed at the family hospital, and he then leaves. Matron then goes into her office just to see Hetty looking for the book. She stops her, and then they have this stare-down scene across the table where they walk opposite one another and they talk each other down. Hetty says that the book has proof, but she then pauses and is asked what proof by Matron. Matron says that she knows nothing and that nobody will believe her. Matron proceeds to place the book on an unlit fire, and Hetty steps in her way, as she is going to get a lighter. However, after another stare down, Hetty steps back and witnesses Matron lighting the fire, and she's yelled at by Matron to get out. When Hetty is gone, Matron grabs the book off the burning fire and she tries to put it out, and she succeeds in doing so. Later that night, Hetty tells Harriet that Matron had burnt the book. Harriet, however, is tired of Hetty being selfish, and she feels like nobody cares about her. She says that she doesn't want to leave everybody behind. Hetty asks why she didn't tell anybody sooner, but Harriet says that she's tried all day and that all Hetty cares about is Matron. Hetty argues that this was her chance at bringing down Matron, and Harriet tells her that she is selfish. Meanwhile, Cranbourne argues with Matron bottomly about the criminal gang and the flour. Matron says that she will change suppliers and that they must work together. She tries to praise Cranbourne and he leaves. Matron sits down on her desk and she looks at the New York flyer. And that's where we end the episode. I like that we get to see more of Cook Jenkins. Well, I'm starting to like this Cook Jenkins character. She's a true Yorkshire lass. The entire Jam Day thing felt like a whole military operation. I think this also gave Elizabeth a bit more lines of dialogue to say that she wants a job for the future and she doesn't want to be involved with any mischief. I kind of feel as though it's too early to let Blanche go because she was introduced at the back end of last season or midway through the last season. And I think this was a bit early to let her go. I think that Blanche could have had a bit more character development. And the entire story of her sister Jess sneaking in with a book which has data on Matron with a list of nearly every foundling that had been sold off, as we find out in the next episode. It was kind of it's kind of dumb making Jess blend in, because no one would recognise her whatsoever. Like, Sheila didn't recognise her, and everyone else just passed her off as, I don't know, some foundling girl, when really they should have asked her a bit more questions about herself. Then we have the introduction of the clipboard and Cranbourne surveying the building. I think this is when the cracks are starting to show between Matron and Cranbourne, because Cranbourne is starting not to trust Matron now, because she's... and you can see that their beliefs both clash. Matron is traditional, whereas Cranbourne is a bit more progressive. We get to see more of Constable Clark and Nurse Winterson's blossoming relationship here, where he notices that she likes a certain flower. We also get to see more of Mr. Bronston, reporting directly to Matron. Now we go on to episode 4. I think the whole flower making people ill mystery is a tiny bit obvious, because the Yorkshire puddings didn't look like real Yorkshire puddings. And Cook Jenkins complained that this flour, ew, this is right inefficient flour. And I think that later on we get the revelation that Matron is dealing with criminal gangs. I think that should have been more of an obvious red flag to say that there is more to Matron than meets the eye. One of my favourite scenes in this episode is where Matron and Hetty confront each other in her office, and they just walk around the tables and stare each other down as if it's some big fight or something. They did a similar scene to this in Transformers Prime, when the two Wheeljacks, so the Makeshift, who was a Decepticon, changed into a clone of Wheeljack, and obviously it was Wheeljack versus Wheeljack clone. And before they fought, they just surrounded one another, pacing and, you know, looking in each other's eyes and staring each other down. It just shows how much the two hate each other. And Hetty's hatred for Matron ends up costing her friendship with Harriet. And Harriet quite rightly calls Hetty selfish. Now, as for Mr. Benjamin coming, he really fancied Matron. To which Judd jokingly asks, who'd want to marry Matron? I think they're trying to charm each other so that Matron can leave, and that Benjamin wants to leave with her. But in the end, of course, he now sees Matron for who she really is. And through this episode, she is taunting the hell out of Hetty and Harriet. She literally goes up to them and says, Harriet's going to New York, and she actually says something through gritted teeth. This episode really shows their hatred, Hetty and Matron's hatred for one another. Of course, Harriet worries about going to New York, and Hetty just ignores it, which obviously costs them their friendship, and at the end of the episode they argue. And it's not just them who argue, Cranbourne and Matron both argue about just stuff about the gangs and the flower, and she still tries to praise him, she still wants to keep him on her side, but however, Cranbourne, I don't think the cracks are starting to show in their friendship for sure. Also, we obviously now have the leaks as well, which are quite relevant in the next few episodes as well. And Cranbourne, I think, was carrying out that survey with good reason. And I bet he's glad he did carry out that survey now, because obviously the roof is leaking in the hospital, and obviously a leak could become something much more worse. And also, I love how Vince continuously taunts Nurse Winterson about her love affair with, well, not love affair, but courtship with Constable Clark. So yeah, and anyone could have been. As for the New York thing, it's a big opportunity for both. As for the New York offer thing, I can see why Matron Bottomley wanted to take advantage of it, and yeah, thank you all very much for watching this episode, and I'll see you all next time. So goodbye, good night, and follow the buzzards.